If nothing you've tried has actually changed how you feel, it's not because you're doing healing wrong. It's because no one's helping you see why you actually feel like you're drowning in your anxiety, your stress, and your overwhelm. You're not drowning in anxiety or overwhelm because you don't have enough ways to cope. You're drowning because the story around your thoughts hasn't changed. So no coping strategy can overpower that and give you the results you're hoping for. And don't get me wrong, when you're in the thick of the struggle, I know the symptoms feel heavy. It feels like a 10-ton weight is just crushing down on you. That feeling of constantly overthinking, the emotional ups and downs, and just that overall feeling of being completely burnt out. And so when we get into this place, we'll literally do anything we can to make it stop. We'll try tapping, we'll try affirmations, we'll try meditation, we'll try breath work, we'll literally try anything. And we go into these strategies thinking like, oh, this is going to be the thing that works. This is finally the answer because I just can't take the overwhelm, the overthinking, the emotional ups and downs. I just can't take it anymore. So this has to be the thing because if it doesn't, then maybe I'm going to be like this forever. And that's the last thing that we want. And so we go into the strategy or the modality like gung-ho, like so excited, feeling like this is it. And then we do it and we might feel better for a little bit, but we inevitably get back to the same place that we were, that feeling of just being completely defeated, that feeling of being frustrated and overwhelmed and just never feeling like anything's going to change. And so after we try all of these strategies, we think, how come nothing sticks? How come I don't feel better how come I don't feel better? How come I keep ending back up in this place over and over again? I did what I was told. I tried the things. I journaled, I said the affirmations, I'm trying to use law of attraction. I'm doing everything and I still can't come out on the other side of it. And the reason is that because we're taught that healing is about techniques and that once you change the way you feel, then you won't be stuck on your healing journey and you'll finally have the life you want. But here's the thing, the industry actually gets it backwards. They teach you to manage what you feel instead of understanding why you feel it. So most healers and coaches spend 80% of their time giving you tools and maybe 20% working on your beliefs, the story you have about yourself and your life, and how your beliefs and your story skew how you see things. And this is so backwards because what it does is it tells you that relief equals change, but it actually doesn't. Once the relief fades, the underlying belief stays the same. So your life is shaped by your beliefs and your story. So no tool or strategy can outperform the story you've been telling yourself for years or maybe even a lifetime. The tools become band-aids because they're being used to cover up that story of I'm a failure, I can't handle this, I'm not capable. And those beliefs of being a failure, of not being able to handle things, of not being capable, they actually go against the coping strategy. So the coping strategy is not going to stick. And this is why people fall off the bandwagon, not because you don't have the discipline, but because the tool never matches the story that you're living in. This is why popular advice like just say no as a form of self-care doesn't work if your story is, I can't disappoint people. The other advice that floats around out there is use a script to show up confidently on video, but this doesn't work if you secretly hate the way you look. I know this because I lived it. My therapist focused on the tools. So when she told me that I was codependent, she said use invisible cooking spray and invisible scissors to cut the strings of codependency away or to have the codependency slide right off. Or she said to use affirmations or pretend like I was the CEO. And she even gave me this poem that was called Think a Better Thought. And she told me to recite that to myself every morning. And that would actually be the thing that changes how I see myself. I wouldn't feel like a failure anymore if I just read this poem to myself every day, and because then I would start to believe that I wasn't a failure. I read that poem every day for months and months and months, and it didn't change anything because as I was reading those words, they went in one ear and out the other because it wasn't fundamentally changing my view about myself to read some words in a poem called Think a Better Thought. because my view of being a failure was deeper than thinking a better thought. And none of the tools and strategies that she suggested worked. And even the thing that she was most adamant about was that I take medication, because I could use the medication as a tool to get myself out of the ditch. It would give me stairs so that I wouldn't have to claw myself out of the ditch every single day. But I could not allow myself to take that pill. And none of the other strategies worked either, because I thought I was a failure and I didn't believe that I was capable, safe, or even successful, really. And so I felt like if I needed a pill to get through the day, or if I needed to carry invisible scissors in my pocket, then that meant that I was a failure. And so actually, I wasn't failing the tools. The tools just weren't compatible with how I saw myself. It took something much different to actually make a shift than just a metaphorical toolbox filled with tools. So the thing that really made this shift possible, and a lasting shift, it was that things actually changed when I changed the way I started to see myself, not when I changed the tools. And that happened because I had to start looking for all of the evidence that suggested that I actually wasn't a failure, because there was more evidence in my life that said I was actually successful than I was a failure. What had to shift was where that story of being a failure started. It started way back in childhood and was reinforced in my teen years. And so that's where the tools aren't going to do anything, because they're not getting back to where the story started. They're just helping you to manage the symptoms in the moment. So once the story shifts, once I left that story behind of the I am a failure, then I was able to use tools that were actually helpful instead of overwhelming. My reactions became far less extreme. I stopped putting this pressure on myself, this immense amount of pressure to be perfect and to prove that I actually was successful and not a failure. And the crazy thing, I was not having extreme reactions. The pressure dropped. There was no magical shift that really happened. It was not this profound awakening. It was something so gradual. And it was because I started looking at, where did the story start? Is that story 100% true? Or is that a story that someone else has told me and I've taken it as the truth? It wasn't that my life became magically easier overnight. There were still struggles. There were still ups and downs. I just wasn't as paralyzed by them. I wasn't as overwhelmed by them, because I was starting to use things that actually tools, strategies that aligned with where I actually was, instead of just grabbing for anything and everything that seemed like it would be the perfect fix. In that same place where nothing has worked for you, it's not because you failed. It's because no one's helped you to focus on the layer that actually matters. You've been trying to fix symptoms with tools instead of understanding what's actually causing the symptoms. It's the story and the belief that you're focusing on. And so, to be completely honest, you actually don't need more techniques. You need a new way of seeing things first. Because when your perception shifts, everything else finally has a chance to work. It's not that you're resistant, or that you're stuck on your healing journey, or that you're even broken, or that there's something wrong with you. It's that you've been handed 1,000 different tools that haven't taken your beliefs and your story into consideration. So once you understand the story that you're living in, the tools stop feeling like lifelines and things actually start working, because the way that you're viewing things is starting to change.